and set him apart. Paul recognized that he had so many privileges, so many potentialities that he could use. I mean, again, he's born to a Jewish family in a Roman provincial capital. He was a Roman citizen, giving him privileges that most Jews could only dream of. He was thoroughly trained in Jewish tradition and scriptures. He was knowledgeable of Greek and Roman thought and culture. In essence, Paul is the perfect candidate for God to use in the way that he's about to call him out. He's the perfect one to go into non-Jewish areas and to share the gospel of Christ. So you think maybe God had been preparing Paul all along? You think maybe God had had a hand in all of those things and was using all of those things to get Paul to that point? Yes. I think it's very clear that he was. But as we think about that, it brings us to another question. What about you? What about you? What special attributes and circumstances has God placed in your life to prepare you? Think back through your life. You know, for me, I grew up in a Southern Baptist church. All of my life, I grew up in a church that you knew, you could go to sleep in the sermon during the worship service, and if you woke up within 3 minutes, you could tell exactly what time it was because it was so set. I mean, we knew. You sang a song, you had prayer. It was like you knew exactly. And even by the song, you could tell, is this the second song, the third song, or the fourth song? It was so set. We were so traditional. We had an organ and a piano, and Lord help you if you ever tried to bring anything else in there. Unless you were a teenager. Teenagers could play other instruments as a special, and that was okay. But I grew up in that culture. And to me, that was church. Then I went off to college. And this wacky guy stands up at the Baptist Student Union lunch and has the audacity to play a guitar and sing Christian songs. And then it gets even worse. He pulls out a keyboard and he's got like rock sounds on this keyboard. And I thought, oh my goodness, all of these people they're going to die and go to hell because they're singing this music. And then it got even worse than that. In a Southern Baptist setting, can you believe this? Somebody actually raised their hands while we were singing. Whew! I had to get out of there. It drove me crazy. How could they do this? Well, I went back the next week. Now, I'll be honest, I went back the next week because they served free lunch. And I was a freshman in college, and I was in the Corps, and I was not getting to eat a whole lot at breakfast time. I didn't eat a whole lot at dinner time. And lunch was like the only time I could eat. And they had pretty good lunches at that Baptist Student Union. So I went back. And I went back, and I started listening again, and I started watching, and I was like, okay, what's going on? Started listening to the songs. They were pretty good songs. There was something to these songs. And then I started watching the people that were raising their hands, I thought, man, these guys are Pentecostal holy rollers. How dare we let them in a Southern Baptist setting? And I thought, sure, because I knew about Pentecostal holy rollers. They were just religious on Sunday. And, they lived like demons all the rest of the week. And so I made this conclusion, that's what these people are doing, right? They're just coming here on Wednesdays and faking it so they can get their free lunch, and then they go live. I started meeting some of those guys. And they weren't. They didn't fake it. I started becoming intrigued. I started watching them. And I became convinced that there was something to it. And so I had to overcome teaching that I had given to myself that you couldn't play rock and roll sounding music, that you could use guitars That you could sing songs that didn't come out of that little red book that we had called a hymnal. And terror of all terrors, you could actually raise your hands while we were worshiping. And I became convinced that there was something maybe to it. Went to my first church, and I had people that didn't like that kind of music. And, I was able to talk with them. And I could say to them, I understand where you're coming from. Because I've been there. I grew up there. In a lot of ways, God prepared me for the role that He had me to play in the church in Bellingham. Because when they started talking about Southern Baptist Way, I knew it. I could talk it. I'd lived it. But man, I had also seen the liberating effect of stepping outside of that barrier that we build for ourselves. The Apostle Paul was able to look back at his life and say, God prepared me. He built me. He put all of these things into my life to perfection, so that when God called him on that Damascus road, Paul was able to say, I can be effective in a Jewish setting. I can be effective in a Gentile setting. Now look at your own life. God made you just as He wanted you. Whether that means that you are a sports fanatic and you just can't wait to get out of here so you can go home and watch the Seahawks today, or whether you absolutely hate the Seahawks in any kind of sports, whatever. Whether you are somebody that the epitome of a wonderful time would be able to go to the Seattle Symphony Orchestra and to enjoy a night listening to an orchestra, or if you're the kind of person that hears that and thinks, oh man, I'm getting a headache. God made you just as He wanted you. And He has built you in such a way that there are people that you are able to share the gospel with that would probably never listen to me. And there are people that I will have the opportunity to share the gospel with that might never listen to you because of the background that I have, because of the background that you have, because of the things that you like. I would have a hard time sitting down and really sharing the gospel with somebody who really, really enjoyed Star Wars. I'm not a big Star Wars fan. Now, I watch it occasionally because my son loves it. But if you tried to if you said to me, Grant, here is a guy who is a Star Wars fanatic, use some of the things of Star Wars to share the gospel with him, I would be lost. But there is actually a book that had a guy in seminary. There is actually a book that has been written that shares the gospel using the Star Wars story. There's somebody that had this love for Star Wars and told the story of the gospel using the characters from Star Wars. That's somebody who recognized a gift that they had, a peculiar thing about their personality, and used it to their advantage and used it to the glory of God. What I want to challenge you today is to think about all those things, all of those attributes, personality traits, experiences, the things that you are excited about. Think about all of those things and ask yourself, how can I use them to the glory of God? Paul used the experiences that he had to the glory of God. How about you? What is it in your life? What special attributes, circumstances has God provided for you to glorify Him?